Hello and welcome back to our last session of this year's conference. So I'm going to invite my colleague, Geoff Davis, the Executive Manager of the Software Development Team here at eWater. Ta-da! Geoff's going to run through some model management tools, an update on what the developers have been working on. And if you've got any technical questions, then feel free to send them through. He'll do his best to answer them on the spot. Otherwise, perhaps it's a topic for a future webinar. Take it away, Geoff.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming. So, what have we been up to this year? It's obviously been a hectic year, but we've managed to get a lot done this year. So, thought I'd talk a bit about model management tools, a general developer update, and then I'm happy to answer any questions people have. So these guys do most of the work. So this is the dev team. So if you see them in Remo, see any of these heads pop up, feel free to go and ask them technical questions that they may or may not know the answers to. So model and scenario management tools. So I've always been excited about version control, but it's good to see a lot of modelers are also getting excited about version control. As we know, good model management allows you to specify the exact configuration, inputs, and version of software used to reproduce model results. So obviously some decisions are made with source models that have ended up in court, and people need to be able to defend the process for building their models and how they make their decisions. It's where version control and model provenance tools come in. So eWater has been doing a bit of work in this space, and we figure you need a version control system for models, data files, plugins, and scripts that process inputs or outputs of those models. We think it'd be good to have an interface to configure, edit model scenarios with a system to store and verify scenario configurations. The capability to run multiple scenarios in parallel on multi-core desktop and office grids in the cloud would be great, and the ability to store all those results. But we also need to make sure we have a governance trail which links the model configuration with the scenarios and results for repeatability. And also an interface for reviewing and comparing scenarios and generating metrics for assessment and to support decision making. This is also about providing an interface for those who use model results rather than models to help them explore the results themselves without having to engage the modelers to do that exploration for them. So in terms of what we've been working towards, a model data store. So using version control to maintain a complete history of every file. So we recommend people to use Git for version control. And this is an example that Dan Stars from ACT has let me use. So we've helped train Dan in how to use version control tools with Source. We've also made a number of changes to Source to make it work better with version control tools. So this includes every change ever made to these files that get pushed back into the system to make sure you have repeatable results. Using these tools, you get who made the change, when they made the change, and why the changes were made. Using the source export summary, you can get down to you can quickly see every change that was made to the model between different versions. So in this case, we can see that the leaf area index was changed from 2 to 1. And it's easy to do that throughout time using the export summary. The second component, we're calling the scenario architect, where you build and manage scenarios in a scenario data store, and you can also manage a model data store. It'll help you replicate results from previous scenarios, and you can hook it up to either run on a local machine and in the future be able to repeat these results on either a cloud or an internal cluster of machines. So the Run Manager, so Melbourne Water has helped us build the Run Manager at runmanager.ewater.org.au, and it takes advantage of Amazon Web Services, and when they want to do a large multi-replicate objective optimization problem, they can spin up 400 machines and run it in a matter of a couple of days instead of a few weeks. So we have a scenario data store to maintain scenario results with metadata or the time series information from the model data store to be able to reproduce those results and let you verify that that configuration produced those results. And you can also include things like calculated statistics or indices and even PDFs and reports in what we're calling the scenario data store. And for the user interface to inspect the results, we have a customized dashboard with a focus on runs to do your standard time series plotting, comparing of runs, filtering and searching between different runs that have been made available within the scenario data store. So this is where we're going with our scenario management and analysis tools. I'd like to thank South Australia and Melbourne Water in particular for their support in helping us build initial versions of these tools. So in terms of the model data store, we are having public training on how to use the model data store using Git, and we've helped train MDBA, Western Australia, SA Water, Sydney Water, Melbourne Water, ACT. So a lot of organisations are picking up this process to store their models using a model data store approach. Cool. I might just check out the Q&A about this before we move on to have you got a plugin for Git that lets you get meaningful file diffs for RSproj? Aaron, so we recommend you use the auto export summary to give you a text file version, but there is actually a diff tool that does give you a user interface, and it is actually, you can use command line. We could integrate it better with Git, but we haven't at the moment, but we certainly could do that in the future. So Marlene, the system, the model data store can be set up with your internal organization's Git provider. So ACT Government have used Azure DevOps, and that's fine. Melbourne Water also use Microsoft's Azure DevOps, whereas other organizations use Bitbucket, and that's fine too. Cool. Okay, now I'll get on to changes that we've done to source recently. So I'll be talking through changes since the last conference. I won't be going through the details of MusicX and the initial version of Urban Developer because we went through that during the launch of MusicX. So this is a bit niche. So the ordering phase, so we have within source, we have a constraints phase that goes down the network, an ordering phase that goes up the network, and then the flow phase that also comes down the network. We've split out previously, functions only had access to something called the ordering phase, which was actually a combination of the constraint phase and the ordering phase. So we've just split this out So you have a water user and constraints before the ordering phase. It just gives modelers more access to more up-to-date information about the constraints when they're putting in functions for the order phase. So this is in source 5, and we have upgraded people's models. So if you notice anything different, then please check your functions in the edit feature table for the functions. So some changes for results manager. We've changed it so with custom charts, they don't automatically get saved by default, and you can build a folder structure for your custom charts. And any custom charts that are generated are deemed to be temporary custom charts, and they'll be blown away when you save and reload source. And there's also a filter search in here. So when you do start building folder structures for your custom charts, they'll still be easier to find. Moving on, mentioning something from Aaron's talk. Aaron mentioned we've been doing work in results streaming, and we've got more improvements for results streaming coming out in source 5.4, which will be at the end of this month. We haven't yet begun work on input streaming, which would dramatically improve the amount of memory used, but we're first focused on doing the output and the results streaming, and then we'll be doing input streaming afterwards, later down the track. But if you are doing, even for single runs, if you are doing a large number of recorders, it could be handy and could also improve your runtime to stream the results to disk, rather than allocating all the RAM up front and then writing to that memory. When you do start to do these large models, such as Aaron was doing, and Queensland do have a similar approach to running really long models, you can get hard drives getting filled up using the default paths. So in the next version of Source, the production release, you'll be able to edit the temporary folders that are used by the application. Another tool that's going to be important when using these when running large models, you can stream to what's called a .sdb file format. And once you have a file in the SDB format, again, you won't be able to open these res CSVs in Excel, but you will be able to use this tool to extract single time series or convert different files to different formats. So it's called source.datautility.exe, and it's a command line tool that's available from Source 5, and will be available with every version of Source going forward. So you can manipulate source DBs, or you can convert from any of our supported time series formats to any of our other supported time series formats. So understanding ordering. So a lot of people ask the question of, why didn't my water user get their order, and why did my storage make that release? So we've tried to make it easier for users to get more information about the ordering system, and we've done that in a couple ways. We've introduced something that we've called the order crawler. So it first came out in version 5, but there's a lot of improvements in the next version of Source as well. And available under miscellaneous, ordering, order crawler. So it allows you, when you turn it on, it records a large amount of data for all of your nodes in the network. So it's not the sort of tool that you're going to be having on all the time, but it is a good tool to work out why things are occurring in your model. So you can see up here, you can show constraints, and you can see all the constraints, the max travel time, the minimum travel time, or the min and max, or all of them. So in this case, for this minimum flow node, you can see O for the orders, and you can see there's 3 numbers here. And that's because their travel time, their minimum travel time for this node is 4 days, and their maximum travel time is 6 days. So there's 3 values of the orders. So this is 4 days out, this is 5 days out, and this is 6 days out. And this is the flow that occurred on this date in here. So hopefully it's a full schematic, and you can zoom in and move around and investigate the network. So hopefully people will be able to use this to get a much better understanding of why their model's behaving the way that it is. We've also included some new order recorders. So you can get access to a lot of data from the recorders, but not all of that data is necessarily available through modeled variables and functions. So we've included under the orders for every node, the orders that are arriving the current time step or the expected order, and the orders at both minimum and maximum travel times. So the command line and service interface, we've done quite a bit of work on performance for these. So you can specify no outputs to make the processing much quicker. So if you do have auto export results or the simulation log turned on, they will still work, but you won't get any additional outputs. And if you are using result streaming, as well as this outputs mode, you will see significant performance improvements in using the command line or the service interface. So data sources. So people we've seen have been using reload on run a bit with data sources. And when you are loading a file that has multiple columns, you need to be careful about how that each individual column gets discovered. So previously it was always by column index. So if your time series was in the second column, it should always have been in the second column. Whereas now we're allowing you to not just match by position, we're also allowing you to do match by name, which is also becoming the default matching process when you are using reload on run. So if you are creating new projects, it will match by name by default, whereas old projects will always be by position unless you've gone in and updated it. One change that will affect results going forward is we've made a number of changes to how date ranges calculate the dates and what data they make available when using date ranges with modeled variables. So we've left in the previous features. They work the same, and you can, when you create a new project, you will use the new date range system. And for your existing projects, we suggest you turn off the legacy date ranges and test it out to see what result changes occur and make appropriate changes to your models. One of the other areas we've been working hard in this year is in river operations. So there's a river operations mode within source. MDBA have been helping us to improve how river operations works within source, and they're looking to run source for their river operations in parallel with their existing spreadsheet systems. So when you have, this is the river operations tabular editor. So it gives a table view of all your results, and each of the columns in this system is a different recorder that has been added on the left. And you can see the yellow highlight line allows for travel time. And in this example, you can see some of the elements are editable by this pencil in the historic period, whereas other items, the river operator can override the values in both the historic period and in the forecast period. So this grey line here is essentially the today line. But I'm excited to get MTBA over the line in terms of moving over to use source for their river operations. So another very exciting thing I know is the version number system. We've changed our version number system. So in the past, when you've been doing upgrades, you might have seen error messages saying, I need source version 4.11.A or 4.11.B. So we've shelved that system, and now it'll be all based, your database version number is essentially this third digit. So if someone gives you a project file and the third digit is higher, you will need to upgrade. Whereas if you are given a file that's saved in the same first three digits, so if this last digit is different, that's fine. The last digit doesn't matter. But if the third digit has changed, that means you'll need to upgrade in order to open that model. So we've got some urban developer improvements in source 5.4. You can now put in custom end uses that are defined with a function or a data source. So this allows you to expand the existing built-in appliances that are used. In this example, I've included evaporative cooling, which I know is one that we were looking to find a good algorithm to include, whereas now you can put in your own function for evaporative cooling and see how it goes. Also, the parameterizer within Urban Developer now has been extended to work on all existing end-use models, whereas previously it was built to handle the dwellings and occupancy. So a few of the minor changes we've made, WEIR constituent processing. So constituents in WEIRs are now processed like storage routing links, where each division has its own processing model, as opposed to storages that are given one model across the whole storage. So we're also included ordering lag time, possibly coming soon, that allows you to specify a different lag for the ordering system than for the flow. This can be handy when you've got long networks and rounding can cause an issue. So if you've got 1.3 days travel time, 1.3 days travel time, and 1.3 days travel time, as you go up the network, each of those different travel times will be all rounded down to 1. So when you've got the top and bottom nodes, the actual travel time is closer to 4 days, but source will currently only see that as 3 days travel time. There's the constituent trends and percent removal model. So links and storage decay models have now been extended to include an option to decay to a background concentration rather than always decaying to 0. And so you have the percent removal that can occur after the decay. We've recently put in storage operating constraints for NetLP ordering. So storage operating constraints are where you force the storage to spill or release water at a certain height with a maximum constraint, or you can make it so it won't release water below a minimum constraint. And in rules-based ordering, you can set the relative priority for those constraints when you're using priority ordering. We've implemented the consistent lock-unlock feature for modeled variables in functions, which brings it in line with function selection and data source selection. So with Urban Developer, we're slowly extending the number of recorders that have what we call a long description. So within source, instead of just having the name of a recorder, we're slowly including more and more to have a long description, which can be turned on in the Project Explorer. The feature table and most of the tables now include units when exported, and they'll be checked on import. We've included more recorders in environmental flows. And we've also been adding more validation. So functions or modeled variables that are used and don't have a time of evaluation set will start to fail. So if you are upgrading your model and you're starting to get it won't run, the error messages should show you, but this is one of the reasons why it won't automatically run. We've been increasing the validation of the function system. So, and as Catherine mentioned yesterday, we have removed the maximum node limit to make sure that she could run her 5,000 node model. We've also been making improvements to what's called the subsource plugin to make it work much better for single projects. So I won't go into the details of the subsource plugin for now, but it's mostly so you can have a larger source model running a smaller source model every time step or at a specific periods to work out things like an allocation going forward. So where we're going in the next 12 months, we're going for better integration of Urban Developer, Music and Source. It's part of a project with Melbourne Water. So we'll be able to have a much better integrated source model running template models for Urban Developer and Music during a source run. We're going to be doing more work on model management tools. As I said, with South Australian Department for Environment has been helping us build first versions of these tools, but we're hoping to do more work on those in the future. We're working with Water New South Wales to provide hot start for rainfall runoff models. So this is so you can essentially run it for a period and save the state of those rainfall runoff models and then run from that point and continue rather than having to run your entire warm-up period. You can just save the state and then run from that period. We're going to look at improving the marker routing for constituents. We're going to, hopefully, we'll be able to make Run Manager, the cloud-hosted source running platform, work from within source. So hopefully we'll be able to make it so from within source, instead of just hitting run, you'll be able to hit a run on the cloud button and it will essentially send the job off to the cloud. You can keep working in source and it will just queue up the runs that you want to run, and then they'll all come seamlessly into the results manager when they're complete and downloaded. And one thing that we're working towards is .NET 5.0. So Microsoft have announced and they've recently released Microsoft's .NET 5.0 and it's going to be cross-platform. So this is the first step to getting source to be able to run on Linux natively. So at the moment you can run source on Linux through Wine, but this opens up the door for us to be able to run source natively on Linux in the future. But it's a bit of a road to get there, but we are working towards it. Cool. Thanks for that. And I'll start looking at some questions. Marlene. So Marlene's asked, can you explain what you mean with the WEIR constituent processing a bit more? Sure. I'll got a diagram for that. So, previously, the WEIR was essentially lumped, like a storage is lumped in terms of its constituent processing. So it only had one constituent model working on the volume in the WEIR, which became a problem for a particular model we were dealing with that had a physical cap of 9 milligrams per litre for the oxygen levels. So if you just had it across the whole WEIR, certain parts that on average it would never go over it, but if you split it up into per division, the volumes would increase over that limit. So instead of having one constituent model that works on the whole volume and constituent in the WEIR, we now have, in this case, for this example, we have 9 constituent processing models. So that cap gets enforced in each division rather than the cap being enforced on an average across the entire WEIR. Cool. I hope that explains it. I don't have an ETA for source on Linux. I can't. I'm excited about it, but I'm afraid I don't have an ETA. So, will there be a utility to clear the app data folders as they can become too big too quickly? We do automatically clear the folders for you. So we do hope to take care of that every time you exit the application. We attempt to clear those as best we can. So we don't think we'll need a separate utility to do that. So that was from Deepak in WA. Hereboard from Melbourne Water has asked, will the Inside Run Manager work with local machine as well? I don't see why it couldn't. I think we do plan on making it work for local clusters, but I haven't considered whether or not it would work for the local machine. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't, but that probably would work fine. Another question from Hereboard. Does Autocrawler work like old GV edit inside the source with more flexibility? So it doesn't replace GraphViz. So this is the Autocrawler with a Victorian example, and it is all built within source. And there's, yeah, so it's not really like using GraphViz for NetLP. So for those who haven't used network linear programming method of ordering, you can do a dump to use a tool called GraphViz to give you more detail about what's going on within the NetLP ordering system. Okay, I've got a question from Andrew Heron. Is there a processing cost time to run by using by name or by index? Option for data sources. There would be, but I'd say it would be insignificant. I mean, it obviously has to find the name. So if you've got 1,000 columns, you might start to notice something. But if you're only talking in the order of 100 columns, I think you should be fine. I don't think it would be noticeable. Andrew? Cool. I've got a question from Dale Brown. It's great to see new versions and features coming out. Can you outline the process for updating legacy plugins? So we can bring all the models with dependencies into the latest version. So obviously, if they're community plugins, we'll be releasing new versions of those plugins with the application. If you do have plugins provided by, if you do build your own plugins or they're provided by someone else, then you're going to have to talk to them about an upgrade path, or you're going to have to work it out yourself. So we do offer, if you are prepared to make it a community plugin, we do manage the upgrade process for those plugins. So this is a question from Vanaphone. Can music model apply for other nations and any possibilities for free version? So there is a trial version of music. I don't remember the exact details of the trial version. That's a free version of music. We might have to get you in contact with Ashish about that. How can normally calibrate in music models to ensure the validity of model results? I am the head software guy. I think I might have to call on someone else to answer that specific music calibration question, I'm afraid. So I might have to take that on notice, and I might see if I can get someone to find you during at the end of the conference. Cool. And a last question from Michael Finger. Is that why plugins need version to be the same 3 digits now? Yes, that's correct. Because of the way we've changed the database versioning and the number versioning, plugins now need to be consistent to that 3 digits. Cool.
Okay. Thank you, Geoff. Well done. Thinking on your feet there with some questions. What is that?
Sorry. It's just a reminder for me to go get my children at some point.
Excellent. Don't forget that. Alrighty. Well, that brings us to the end of our presentations. Thank you, everyone, for sending in your great questions and your participation. Before we sign out today, I'm just going to invite Robert Carr, eWater's Chief Executive, back to the stage for some closing remarks. We have left some time in the session if you would like to continue to chat. Might be the time of day where you might need to get yourself a slightly strong beverage after 2 intense afternoons of listening. We'll keep that open for a little while if you'd like to continue to interact with each other. So let me call Robert up to my stage.
All right. Thanks, Trudy. Well, here we come to the end of yet another eWater conference. I was reflecting on if we go back to 2012 and think about where we were as we just came out of the CRC. A lot of that, those papers were about source itself, pushing the software against the limitations of bugs and size and speed. Excuse me a second. Here we go. And the functionality that we had when we came out of the CRC, and how far we've come. Today, the emphasis is on communication. How do we communicate the model results? How do we answer the questions of our stakeholders? How do we deal with huge models? How do we deal with huge numbers of runs of models? So as we've matured and the software has matured and the questions we're answering are becoming more complicated, the emphasis has moved from the functionality of the software itself into this communication world, and that's very exciting. It's also very exciting that now we are looking towards cross-platform, the cloud, dealing with huge data sets, model provenance, all those sorts of issues. It doesn't mean that the drive for more functionality is coming to an end. Far from it. We have groundwater, we have economics, we have all kinds of additional functionality yet to go. Water quality, all those sorts of things. So I would really commend our user group to realise that eWater Source and all the tools were born out of this strive for the dividend efficiency of a common platform. So when you are at the bleeding edge, when you are testing out things which haven't been done before, and this forum is a place to do it, but actually sharing the technology through the community plugins, through finding ways to bring others into your the results of your work, that continues this this push we have for the national benefit of having a common platform with standard methods which are sufficiently common that we can all buy into them. So we are not talking about extremely bespoke or tailored solutions for a particular basin or a particular environmental flow. We're talking about once the processes of running multiple replicates, 10,000, 100,000 replicates, dealing with different date treatments, share those with the community because they are generic and they do help then everybody move forward. In the context of that, remember the eWater Toolkit is there. The Toolkit has been running for 30 years now, since, well, nearly 30 years, since the early 90s, under the CRC for catchment hydrology. Many of those tools are now part of Source, and we are going through a process right now of looking at those tools and which ones are still being used, but we need to refresh the Toolkit. The Toolkit is the place where these somewhat bespoke tools are put out there for others to test and try. It's not a bug-free environment, of course, in the Toolkit, but it is the way to start this migration process from the bleeding edge to the leading edge to what we can use with confidence on a daily basis. So please, let's keep the faith around that. There's so much exciting work has been showcased in these last 2 days. Let's keep our eye on that goal, because together we can achieve a lot more, a lot faster, and keep pushing the boundaries. So this goes along with the maturing of eWater itself as an organisation in the national stage. As I talked in the opening address, eWater as a shared research platform with all the owners being all the governments of Australia. The future is bright now for us to push into shared research, shared funding, where all the jurisdictions and the governments can benefit. So I really am very excited to see what's going on, and look forward to next year, which we will certainly look at a blended solution. This online has been extremely successful, and thank you all for joining. And we'll see you again next year. So thank you very much, and back to you, Trudy.
Thank you, Robert. Well, yes, I think it's been very successful. It's takes a bit to get used to, but I think this was much better than us just bombarding you with a series of Zoom videos. So thanks everyone for coming. Thank you for participating, for interacting with your colleagues. We have made some recordings, and I will start to distribute them over the next few weeks via the eWater YouTube channel. We will also share PDFs, and they're normally up on our wiki, but with our new improved website, we might even be able to get them there. So they'll be there for you to look through. I encourage you again that we have a new community forum, so you can keep interacting via that. Some of you sent through some technical questions that I know others had some answers for. So please feel free to use that to continue your conversations. So I will leave the stage. As I said, the presentation will run, the Remo will run for a little bit longer. Feel free to stay, but we also appreciate it's been some long days and you might be ready to relax. So thank you, everyone.
And before you go, Trudy, I want to thank Trudy for putting on such a great conference. We have launched into new technology platforms here. We were a little bit nervous at the start, but Trudy, thanks to you and the comms team for putting this great event together, and congratulations. Let's do it again next year.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Absolutely. We'll see you all then.